Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for clicking in and visiting this brand new video series called Spiritual How-Tos. You see, I believe each of us are born with an innate desire to connect with something bigger than ourselves. I really do. And this connection that we have inside of us is a spiritual one. And we barely even understand it. We barely even acknowledge it, and we don't develop it. And yet it's in our DNA, I think. That's why I think we look for purpose in the things we do. I think we look to try and find express meaning. And that's how we try to experience connectedness, because there's a spiritual drive. There's a spiritual genetic imprint in us, if you will. You see, man is comprised of three parts, aren't we? Humankind. There's the body, my 5'8", 100+ pounds body. There's a body, the soma. Then there's also the soul, which is the psyche. The psyche is the part inside of us that's our mind and our will and our emotions. And then the third part of man is the spirit, the pneuma. Okay, the pneuma. The pneuma, that's the part that governs kind of our mental and emotional experience, the spirit. You see, we live eternally in the spirit, okay? We have a soul. That's what makes us different than dogs or cats. And we dwell in a body. So that's the three parts of man. And so spiritual how-tos, this particular website, this particular page, this particular video, Spiritual How-Tos, is going to be about that third part of us, the spirit part. The spirit part. Gosh, we're bombarded, aren't we, with all kinds of information about how to care for our bodies. How to exercise, maybe diet, skincare, hair care. I got to have my hair care, right? Those are tons of resources available for our body. But I ask you, how many resources do you have that help you care for your spirit? You see, there's a lot being said in these particular days about spirituality, okay? But I want us to drill down even further, and I want us to be sure to distinguish at this particular video series specifically about spiritual being the spiritual part of us, the part that is a spirit. That's what this will be about. So spiritual how-tos will be about how to care for our spirit. You know, that part that gave us breath, that breathed life into us. How do we care for that? In our title, Spiritual How-Tos, it kind of is unwritten, but it's in my head and I want to get it out there. It really should be how to please God. Spiritually, how do we please God? Is it possible? What things can we do to please God? And so that's the core issue of this particular video series. Okay, how do I please God? I don't know much, or I know a lot. I just know that inside me, that innate desire wants to please God. How do I do it? Well, the very statement, spiritual how-tos, how to please God, it actually presupposes that there is a God to please, right? That's where we have to start. We have to start with, do you suppose there's a God? Do you know there's a God? Are you unsure about God's existence? You see, the spirit part of you needs to have this settled. It needs to have this settled. The spirit part of you needs you to answer that. No one's seen God. We're told that God's a spirit. So how can we please him, this God, if our spirit is uncertain of his existence? And that's exactly where we have to start. How can we please him if we're not even sure he exists? Hang with me. This is going to make some sense, I believe. That's exactly where we start, though, is we have to reestablish our belief in God. You see, in this site, I want to share some real practical steps in these series. Some real practical steps. And I believe that if you're honest, and if your honest position is, I really do want to please God, I want to figure out how to do it, I think you're going to be able to find that your spirit will come alive and be enlarged. Matter of fact, I would kind of guarantee it. I would kind of promise it to you. So let's start. Where do we start to please God? We start with faith. Okay? Faith. Hebrews, a book in the Bible, says, Hebrews 11 verse 6 says, without faith, it's impossible to please God. Why? It goes on to say, because he who comes to God must, number one, first believe that he exists, and number two, believe that he rewards those who seek him. You see, faith, or how to please God, actually begins by believing there's a God, a creator, the sustainer of the universe, the ultimate power with unlimited power, unlimited knowledge, unlimited presence, and even moral perfection. That's the very first place to start, to believe that there is that, not just higher power, there is a higher power, but that higher power is God. The question is, can you start there? Regardless of other Western or even Eastern concepts of God, or even your connection to metaphysics or energies or philosophers or other religions, can you start by placing your faith in the existence of God? This God who brings explanation to existence, this God who brings explanation to origins, this God who unfolds consciousness, makes sense out of it, brings moral values and duties, this God who you can personally know. Can you reestablish your faith that this God exists? St. Augustine said it this way. He said, faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of this faith is to see what you do not believe. So we start with faith. We don't really know, but we step out and we say, okay, I'm going to go for it. And then that is rewarded by, oh my goodness, I'm seeing it now by faith, and I didn't even believe it before. That's what St. Augustine said. Thomas Aquinas put it a different way. He says this. He said, to the one who has faith, there's no explanation that's necessary. But to the one without faith, no explanation is possible. You see, personally, I've based my life on this belief in theism. That's what it's called, theism. I have always believed that there is a powerful God who I can know. Philosophers call that belief, that foundational belief, they call it properly basic beliefs. Seriously. And so I have pretty much gauged my life on these properly basic beliefs for 53 years of my life. And it's always made more sense to me. Seriously. Intellectual sense. It's always made more intellectual sense to me to believe that God was the best explanation for my existence. To believe that God is the best explanation for the laws of nature, for the intricacies and the beauty of intelligent life, for the complex living organisms, for the very basis of our moral code here on this planet. It made intellectual sense for me to believe in a God as the explanation for that. So to start believing in the existence of God was a done deal for me. It was a no-brainer. How about you? Because that's where we start. We have to start with believing that God exists. Hebrews 6 goes on though to say, Hebrews 11, it goes on to say we have to believe that he exists. So that's where we start. But then it says, number 2, we believe that he rewards those who seek him, who look for him. And see, that second step is the place where we begin to see our spirit grow. When we seek him, when we look for him in nature, when we look for him in relationships, when we look for him in business deals, when we look for him even in the own needs, in problems, when we look for him in solutions, when we have questions and we look for him, when we look for him in the joys of life and even the setbacks of life, when we look for him in those situations, he is there, and faith will find him. You see, faith will always see him. But without faith, it's impossible to please him. So how do you know how to please God? Believe that he exists. Believe that he rewards those who look after him. Without those two components, there's no pleasing God. Period. There's just no pleasing God. But with them, not only do we please God, which is remarkable, but our spirit grows because we are feeding it by looking for God. You see, part of the reward of looking for God is it brings a commendation, it brings certainty, it brings assurance, it brings conviction. Part of the certainty is what the reward is from faith. We get rewarded by having a certainty, and that faith enables us to grow, and that faith enables us to go to new places, and that faith, boy, it even enables us to conceive new life. That happened to a lady in the Bible. You see, faith is seeing God in every situation, looking for him in his existence, and believing that his power and his plan is at work. Regardless of what we see, to trust that his plan is at work. I'm telling you, believing he will provide for you and believing that he will bless for you, he will reward you when you see him and not the circumstances. I've been accused of seeing God in everything. Oh, I can think of worse accusations, I guess. And I've also been accused of seeing everything spiritually. But again, I ask, is that bad? If 1/3 of me is spirit, and that 1/3 part of me determines my eternal resting place, then what have I to lose? You see, my spirit, my soul, and my body is sort of like a tricep muscle. My body is strong. My soul is a work in process. My will and my thoughts are a work in process. But it's my spirit that I gotta keep exercising that muscle of the spirit, looking to God and believing that God is in every circumstance. I challenge you as I close out this. I first thank you for your attention, but I challenge you, examine yourself. Number one, do you really believe God exists in every situation that you face? And number two, start looking for him with his answers and his presence in every one of those circumstances. So start today. Start by expressing your belief in God's existence. You might say, God, I believe you are real. Or maybe, God, I'm not sure you're real, but I want to believe. Would you show me? I'm open. Or maybe you're more, God, I've never believed you existed, so help me to believe. I'm open. Or maybe, God, I want to see you in every circumstance of my life. Then listen for his voice. Look for his hand. Feel his presence. Feel it today, tomorrow, and the next day, because he will reward you if you seek him. That's faith. And that's how you start to please him. So how do you please God? First inaugural lesson, by believing he exists, by believing that he rewards you when you seek him. And without those two stepping off points, without this faith, there's no pleasing him. I want to pray. Lord, thank you so much for this viewer. I pray, God, that even right now in the silence of their own heart, they would say a prayer out to you. God, help me to believe you're real, and help me to see you in my life. Expand us spiritually, God. Expand them spiritually so that we can please you in the things that we choose to do here on this planet. I ask you these things in your name, Lord. Amen. Well, each new Wednesday, we're going to have a brand new video. I hope you'll check back. You can find it on Instagram TV. You can find it on YouTube. And you can find it at my website, underdeborahspalm.com, spiritual how-tos. There on my website, you'll also find the notes. I'll attach the notes. Thank you for checking in. And I encourage you to find your strength in seeing God and believing He's going to reward you. Have a good day. Be blessed.